Cool girl entered the wrong room and woke up in the millionaire CEO's bed. What happened melted his heart. Some mistakes don't feel like accidents. They feel like fate, dressed in panic, like falling asleep in a stranger's bed and waking up to the sound of your own name on the lips of a man you were. She was just trying to survive the day. He was trying not to feel anything at all. But in one quiet moment, between fear and forgiveness, between shame and surprise, two lives collided in the most unexpected place. A bed meant for one, shared by a heart that had been waiting far too long to be seen. Lily Hart never imagined the day would end like this. She had spent the past 2 hours balancing a tray of documents, an investor's wine preferences, and her own unraveling patience. The sea breeze from the balcony had turned warm, but the pressure of the corporate dinner chilled every inch of her spine. She was just the assistant, the quiet girl in black heels with a clipboard and a caffeine dependency. No one noticed her unless something went wrong. Tonight, everything had gone right, on paper at least. Ford Tech CEO Henry Ford had just signed a $40 million 0-cents deal with Cullihan Ventures. The glasses clinked, the laughter echoed. Even Henry, who normally operated on eye rolls and clipped syllables, had toasted with a faint smile. "You can relax, Lily," he said quietly before disappearing into the hallway. "Even you earned it tonight. Even you." He wasn't sure if that was meant to be praise, but in his voice it almost passed for kindness. She waited until the guests had dispersed, until the waiters had cleared the final plate of filet mignon, until the sharp glitter of ambition in the room began to dull. Then she let herself breathe, really breathe. Her heels clicked unevenly across the marble hallway. She was tipsy. 2 glasses of wine, her first in months. Her bun had collapsed into something resembling a windswept disaster. Her phone was dead, and the keycard she was holding, definitely not for her room. But she didn't realize that. She found the door slightly ajar. Room 618, or 816. The numbers were blurry. The hallway spun softly beneath her feet, like a merry-go-round she hadn't asked to ride. She thought it was her room. She thought she'd get 5 hours of sleep, maybe 6, before the next corporate fire needed putting out. Instead, she dropped her bag, kicked off her shoes, and collapsed onto the bed. He didn't hear the door lock, didn't see the folded suit jacket hanging by the chair, didn't smell the cedarwood cologne on the pillows. He just whispered, "Best bed ever," and disappeared into sleep. The next morning, Henry Ford woke to the sound of breathing. Not his own. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming. Then he realized the pillow beside him was breathing. The pillow had hair. He sat up slowly. The weight of last night, the wine, the laughter, the unfamiliar warmth. He looked down, and there she was. Lily Hart, sleeping soundly in his bed, arms tucked beneath the duvet like a child, brow slightly furrowed but peaceful. She looked real, uncurated, and deeply unaware of the disaster she was currently starring in. His first thought, "This is a nightmare." His second, He ran a hand down his face, trying to piece together what the hell had happened, but before he could form a plan, she stirred. He mumbled something about the coffee being too cold, and rolled over. He froze. He opened her eyes. They stared at each other in stunned silence, the sunlight slanting through the blinds like judgment. Then she screamed. Or tried to. But came out like a choked gasp as she tumbled out of bed, tangled in sheets, and hit the floor with a thud. She scrambled up, her hair wild, her eyes wide. "What are you doing in my room?" she cried. And he blinked once. "In your room," he repeated, voice dry. "That's funny, because this is my suite." Lee spun around, taking in the masculine decor, the suit jacket, the monogrammed cufflinks on the nightstand. "Oh no," she whispered. "Oh yes," he said, folding his arms. "Welcome to room 618, Miss Hart." He buried her face in her hands. Her voice came out muffled and panicked. "You walked into the wrong room. I was tired. The numbers were... Oh my God." "You were smiling," he added, suddenly amused, "when you were sleeping." He looked up at him, horrified. "It doesn't mean anything." "I hope not." Then, a knock at the door. Her blood turned cold. "Mr. Ford," came a voice from the hallway. "Have you seen Lily? She didn't come back to her room last night." Lily's heart stopped. Henry turned toward her, lips twitching. "I'd," he whispered, "unless you'd like to explain to my entire executive team why my assistant was in my bed, smiling in her sleep." He dove under the bed just as he opened the door. A moment would follow her forever. Not just because she was humiliated, but because of the way Henry looked at her afterward. Not with judgment, but with something closer to curiosity. Warmth, maybe even delight. And that was the day everything began. Not with love, but with one mistake she'd never be able to erase. Chaco, the bed that wasn't hers. Sunlight poured through the sheer curtains, stretching across silk sheets and polished marble floors. Somewhere in the distance, a seagull cried above the waves, a soft reminder that the world was moving on, even if Lily Hart was not. He stirred. Her eyes blinked open slowly like a film reel coming into focus. For a moment the bed felt unfamiliar. Too soft, too warm, too quiet. Her hand reached out instinctively and landed not on a pillow, but something firm, something alive. The breath hitched in her throat. She sat up with a jolt and saw the back of a man's head. Dark hair, a crisp white sheet draped around his waist, and a shoulder that was definitely not hers. Lily froze. Her thoughts came in fragments. "I'm in a bed. That's a man. Which, that's not my... It's... Oh no." Her mouth parted, but the scream got stuck in her throat. The man stirred, and as he turned, the entire axis of her world shifted. Henry Ford. Everett. The man whose calendar she color-coded, whose emails she drafted, whose smile she had never seen until last night. The man who had once fired a junior executive for sneezing during a merger call. And what? And bed. He blinked at her once, groggy and disoriented, then narrowed his eyes slightly. "Miss Hart." That voice, velvet and steel, the voice she usually heard issuing directives or quietly dismantling overpriced consultants in the boardroom. He scrambled back, tangled in sheets, and fell off the edge of the mattress with a soft thud. I don't, this isn't my room," he offered dryly, propping himself up on one elbow. "Yes, I gathered." She scrambled to her knees. Her hair stuck out at all angles. Her blouse was half wrinkled, her face flushed. "I must have walked into the wrong room," she stammered. I thought this was mine. I swear, Mr. Ford, I wasn't trying." He raised a hand. "Relax. No crime has been committed, except maybe the offense of snoring." "Don't snore," she muttered under her breath. "You smiled in your sleep," he added, almost absent-mindedly. He blinked. "That doesn't prove anything." "No," he said, stretching slightly, "but it's interesting." Her entire body went rigid. Her heart was pounding against her ribs like it was trying to flee the scene. "I'll go," she whispered, crawling across the carpet in search of her heels, her keycard, her pride, anything. Henry watched her with a calm expression, as if women accidentally waking up in his bed were just another line item on his daily schedule. Just as Lily had grabbed her purse and made it halfway to the door, a knock sounded. "Knock knock." They both froze. "Gamato CEOCinderellaStories," he said brightly, chipper, oblivious. "Sorry to bother you, but have you seen Lily? She didn't come back to her..." Lily's face turned ghost white. Henry turned to her, one brow raised in something that might have been amusement or mischief. "Under the bed," he mouthed. "No." Without another word, Lily dropped to the floor and slithered beneath the bed, just as Henry opened the door a crack. "Morgie," we greeted smoothly. Natalie peeked in, immediately tilting her head. "You look different." Henry's voice remained calm. "Just a late one." "Oh, right. The investor didn't," she said, scanning the room curiously. "I was just checking on Lily. She didn't show up for breakfast." "Haven't seen her," he said flatly. Under the bed, Lily pressed her hand to her forehead. Her dignity was in tatters. somewhere near the corner of the suite, buried under a heap of shame. Well, if you do, tell her she missed the world's most disappointing croissants. He'll pass that along. The door shut. 2 seconds. Then he turned and crouched next to the bed. You can come out now. Lily emerged slowly, brushing dust from her knees, her voice barely audible. I need to leave. He stood, arms crossed, looking at her like she was a puzzle he hadn't expected but now refused to stop solving. Agreed, but not before you answer one question. He stiffened. Do you remember anything from last night? Her voice cracked. Define anything. He studied her. You smiled, he said again, softer this time, like someone who was finally at peace. Lily swallowed hard. I was drunk. I didn't mean to sleep in your bed. I know. Glued on the noisy track. Henry tilted his head. Interesting that that's your first concern. Her cheeks burned. He moved closer, not menacing but uncomfortably observant. No one will know, Miss Hart. I'm not that cruel. He nodded quickly. Thank you. But let me be clear, he said, stepping past her to pour himself a glass of water. If you're going to break into my room again. He glanced over his shoulder, a flicker of a smile breaking through. At least knock first. He stared at him. Stunned, speechless, and somehow, for reasons she couldn't begin to explain, Natinka's wife had become his wife again. But he was called up on the wire on this one. Luckily for him. Or not yet. He wasn't learning. He realized he wasn't letting this go. And maybe, just maybe, neither was she. Chapter 2. A Deal Under the Sheets. By the time Lily managed to sneak back into her assigned suite, her pulse hadn't dropped below 90 in over an hour. She locked the door behind her, exhaled deeply, and dropped her face into a pillow that, thank God, only smelled like hotel linen. It was a disaster. No, not a disaster. It was the disaster, the kind you remember on your wedding day, your deathbed, and every birthday in between. Was she going to face Henry Ford in daylight? Was she going to pretend she hadn't drooled on his pillow, hidden under his bed, and heard him lie with absolute ease? It would simply disappear. After the trip, maybe after the quarter, maybe after faking her own death. That plan crumbled exactly 4 hours later. The conference hall buzzed with light chatter, clinking cutlery, and the low hum of money. This was the final day of negotiations. The Callahan deal was one of Ford Tech's biggest expansions, and Lily's job, on paper, was to coordinate the closing meeting and keep the coffee flowing. Instead, she was busy keeping herself out of Henry's line of sight. Which proved because every time she looked up, he was already watching her. Not staring, just observing, with that unreadable expression and a tilt to his mouth that made her deeply uncomfortable. Natalie nudged her with a salad fork. What's going on with you and Mr. Ford? Lily choked on her water. Natalie raised a brow. Girl, he's looked at you 4 times since dessert. He just thought strategically. About your hair, Natalie whispered. Lily tugged at her bun. Going to pretend I didn't hear that. Across the table, Charles Callahan's voice boomed. Well now, he said, looking between Henry and Lily with a twinkle in his eye. Am I the only one picking up on something here? Lily froze. Henry didn't. He turned smoothly to Charles, leaned back, and in a voice smooth as bourbon said, We've been getting closer. Let's just say the partnership isn't only on paper anymore. Lily's brain short-circuited. Callahan laughed and raised his glass. I like that. Commitment shows character. Henry lifted his own. To character. Lily nearly dropped her wine. The moment the meeting adjourned, she sprinted. But not fast enough. Miss Hart, Henry called from the corridor. He turned slowly. His expression was deadpan. We need to talk, my sweet. 5 minutes. Sir, unless you'd prefer I walk over to Mr. Callahan right now and explain that my assistant has a severe case of hallway anxiety. He clenched her teeth. Fine. Back in room 618, the tension was palpable. I'm going to sue you, she muttered as she stepped inside, or at least glare very hard. He leaned against the desk. Didn't you hear? We're dating now." He folded her arms. "You told an international investor that we're involved." He lifted one shoulder. "Do you realize how inappropriate? It's the deal." He faltered. What? Ari pushed off the desk and walked toward her, casual, composed. Kaharan was wavering. They were worried about stability, about whether I had skin in the game. When people think you're in a relationship, they assume you have something to lose, something you care about. He stared at him. "So, you lied using me." His voice lowered. "I told the version of the story that got us the outcome we needed." "We?" she asked bitterly. He sighed. "Fine. That I needed, but it worked. And now, Miss Hart, I need a favor." He paced near the minibar. "This is insane. It's 2 days, appearances. A few looks across a table. Maybe a smile." He don't smile. "Try," he said, deadpan. She turned to him, eyes blazing. "What do I—" He blinked. "If I'm going to be paraded around like your fake girlfriend," she said, lifting her chin, "I want something in return." His lips curved slightly. "You're negotiating. I'm surviving." Henry walked over to the table, grabbed a notepad, and scribbled something down. "Consider this a contract," he said, holding it out. Lily took it, read the single line. It rolled her eyes. "Compensation. 1 week of paid time off. Post-deal. No questions asked. Throw in 2 cappuccinos and a foot massage, and we have a deal." Henry smirked. "You'll get the coffee, no promises on the massage." He signed it with the complimentary hotel pen, her signature jagged with adrenaline. And just like that, they had a deal. He was no longer just the girl who fell asleep in the wrong bed. He was now his girlfriend. Temporarily, publicly, and maybe, just maybe, dangerously close to forgetting that none of it was real. Chapter 3. The first lie that felt true. The ballroom shimmered like a dream Lily had once dared to have, and then buried beneath meetings, emails, and bills. The glass walls opened to the Pacific. A grand piano spilled notes into the candlelit air. Men in tailored suits and women in pearl earrings clinked glasses, over words like scalability, merger, and future. Lily stood near the entrance, dressed in a midnight blue dress borrowed from Natalie. It was elegant, safe, just enough to look like someone Henry Ford might actually date. Her heels wobbled slightly as she scanned the room for him. What was she even doing here? She was the assistant, the woman who booked his drivers, who scheduled his dental cleanings, who once fixed a typo on a speech 5 minutes before he went live. Now she was the reason investors thought he was capable of loving someone. "Breathe," she whispered. "Good advice," came a voice beside her. He turned at Henry Ford, suited in charcoal gray, his cufflinks catching the golden light. He looked like he'd been born in that room. Like he owned it. Maybe he did. His gaze swept over him. "You clean up well," he said, voice low. "I borrowed it. Go get used to this." A flicker of a smile touched his lips. "Let's make a good show." He opened his arm. We stared at it. "Seriously? Unless you'd prefer I hold your hand," he said flatly. He took his arm. And just like that, they entered. Conversations quieted. Heads turned. Lily's heart thundered. Henry didn't falter. He nodded to Callahan, who lit up like he'd just won a bet. "Ford," he called out, "and Miss Hart, or may I say, the woman of the hour." Lily gave a polite laugh, a little too high-pitched. "Is it true what they're saying?" Callahan asked, raising a brow. "That you two are more than business partners?" Henry didn't miss a beat. He slipped his hand gently around Lily's waist, a touch so casual and subtle no one would have questioned it. Except Lily, because her body stiffened, her breath caught, and something in her chest cracked open. "Yes," Henry said smoothly, "we're together." Callahan beamed. "I love seeing a man settle down, shows maturity, heart, good instincts." Henry looked at Lily. Yes, she's taught me a few things." Lily blinked at him. Stop it, she told herself. This is just part of the deal. But his fingers were still resting at the curve of her waist. And they didn't move. For the next hour, Lily played her role. She laughed when Henry smirked. She touched his arm when someone asked how they met. She let him refill her glass. She even told Callahan's wife that Henry once cooked her dinner. It was ramen, she added, but he poured it like wine. And through it all, Henry never let her fall. He moved beside her with practiced ease, never too close, never too far, always watching, always waiting. At one point she forgot where she was. He looked up at him and smiled. For real. And he smiled back. That was the moment. The moment she knew they were in trouble. Because, for a few seconds, none of it felt like a lie. Later, after most of the guests had moved to the terrace, Henry leaned in. You did well, he said. I lied to a dozen billionaires, she whispered back. You should be proud. I replied. His hand brushed against hers, barely, lightly touched. And Lily didn't move away. Outside, under a canopy of market lights and ocean air, someone called out, Give us a photo. Callahan grinned. Come on, you two. Something to put in the announcement slides. Lily hesitated. Henry stepped forward. And without asking, without warning, he pulled her gently in. One arm around her shoulders, one hand in hers. She looked up at him, eyes wide. You okay? He murmured. He nodded, but her heart screamed. He smiled for the camera. Click. And in that instant, Lily knew. There would be no unfiling her way out of this. Chapter 4. Her turn to play. Lily hadn't planned on staying behind. But when Henry excused himself to speak with an investor, and the rest of the guests trickled out toward the lounge bar, she found herself alone in the garden. The sea air was cooler now. The sky had turned velvet black, and the fairy lights strung along the... She sat on a bench facing the ocean, heels dangling, wine glass untouched in her hand. It should have felt like relief. Instead, it felt like a waiting room between two lives. Behind her, she heard a quiet set of footsteps. Precise. Intentional. But she didn't need to turn around to... You left your scene partner, she said. Henry sat beside her, close but not touching. You were good tonight, he said, eyes focused on the horizon. So you almost looked like you were enjoying yourself. He was quiet for a moment, then said, Almost. She turned toward him, the glass still cradled in her palm. How long are we supposed to keep this up? Until the contract signed. Or until someone figures out I'm just the assistant who accidentally passed out in your bed. His jaw twitched. No one will find out. He looked away. Unless I want them to... He turned toward her. Is that a threat? No, she said. It's a reminder. The air between them shifted. Denser now. Tighter. Lily stood up, brushing her hands along the folds of her dress. You walk around like you're in control of everything, she said. Even this. Henry's brow furrowed. I am. No, she said softly. You're not. They walked back through the resort's garden in silence. His hand hovered near her back, but never touched. When she reached the hallway near their suites, she stopped in front of his door. He looked down at her. Yes. He tilted her head. If we're pretending, we should practice. His expression didn't change. Lily stepped forward, just enough to close the space between them, just enough for him to feel it. Comfort, she said, closeness. You said you wanted this to look real. I did. He reached up, deliberately kept. Then she let her hand rest there a moment longer than necessary. Henry's breath hitched, so quietly that only someone inches away would notice. He smiled, soft, mysterious, a little dangerous. It can play the part, she said, but you're not the only one who can improvise. And then she walked away up. Henry stood there for nearly a full minute before following her with his eyes. And for the first time since the arrangement began, he wasn't entirely sure who was leading. Back in her room, Lily collapsed onto the bed, heart still racing. It had been one touch. A harmless adjustment. But she'd felt it, that flicker in his chest. The one thing she had been too afraid to admit the night she woke up beside him. It was the coldest man in the building, had warmth hidden somewhere beneath the surface. And if she wasn't careful, she might start wanting to be the one to bring it out. Chapter 5. The Game Breaks the Rules. The dining hall at the Del Mar was quieter than the cocktail party. The clinking of silverware and soft jazz from a string quartet replaced the easy laughter of the previous night. Lily sat to Henry's left at the head table, her place card printed in gold beside his. Everything about the scene was curated, down to the linen napkins and the ocean view catching the last colors of sunset. She didn't belong here. They knew. But every time she reached for her water glass or adjusted her posture, she felt his presence beside her. A calm anchor, or a storm pretending to be still. "Lily, dear," said Mrs. Callahan across the table, "I just have to say, the two of you are so composed together. How long has it been now?" Lily opened her mouth, then hesitated. Henry answered for her, "Long enough to know she's the only person who tells me when I'm being impossible." Lily blinked, thrown off by the warmth in his tone. Mrs. Callahan leaned in. "Well, he certainly looks less tense since you arrived." "She's been good for me," Henry said without looking at her. The words hit Lily somewhere she wasn't ready to admit. He glanced at him, his jaw was relaxed, his voice low and certain. And he wasn't acting. Not entirely. By the second course, Lily realized she was touching his arm. Not deliberately, just a brush here, a shared glance there. At one point their knees bumped under the table, and neither of them moved. She forced herself to focus on her fork. What was happening? They weren't supposed to enjoy this. This was a performance. A two-act lie for the sake of shareholders and signed contracts. So why did her body memorize the shape of his beside her? Why did it feel like the most natural place in the world? Dessert arrived, creme brulee and champagne. Lily leaned in and murmured, "You do know I hate creme brulee, right?" Henry didn't turn, then pretend. He smiled, and took a bite anyway. As the guests trickled out onto the terrace for a final toast, Henry leaned close. "You walk with me?" Lily hesitated, but nodded. The garden was quiet, lit by soft ground lanterns. They walked slowly, side by side, saying nothing for a while. Then Henry spoke. "You were different tonight." "So were you," she said, smiling, charming, approachable. "Should I be worried?" He didn't laugh. He just looked at her. "It wasn't pretending," he said. He stopped walking. Her breath caught. "But what?" He stepped closer. "I meant what I said. You've been good for me." Henry, "Now, I don't do this," he said quietly. "The dinners, the photos, the connection. I've never needed it before." She forced a laugh. "You don't need it now, it's just strategy, remember?" He didn't reply. Instead, he reached up, slowly, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. His fingertips brushed her skin. The moment lingered. "Too long. Too real." Her voice was barely a whisper. "We're breaking the rules." He nodded. "I know. People are watching." Let go. Then his gaze dropped to her lips. And for one suspended second, Lily thought, "He's going to kiss me." Again, she didn't move. Oh, she didn't want to. But just before he did, a burst of laughter echoed from the terrace. The moment cracked like glass. Henry stepped back, his expression unreadable. Lily folded her arms. That wasn't part of the plan. His voice was low, steady, unapologetic. "No," he said, "it wasn't." Later that night, Lily lay awake in her bed, staring at the ceiling. The memory of his touch still tingled on her cheek. Her heart beat too fast. And somewhere between hope and dread, one thought repeated itself over and over. What happens if the pretending stops? Chapter 6. The night she couldn't sleep. The hotel room was too quiet. Even the hum of the minibar and the distant roll of waves did nothing to calm the storm inside Lily's chest. She had changed out of her dress hours ago, washed off the makeup, pulled her hair into a knot that now sagged like the breath she couldn't quite catch. But the mirror wouldn't let her go. But because of how she looked, because of what she felt, and what she didn't know how to unfeel. He lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning shadows across the ceiling. Sleep didn't come. How could it? She could still feel the weight of Henry's hand behind her ear, the flicker of hesitation before he pulled away, the look in his eyes, like he wanted to say something and couldn't, or wouldn't. Every moment of that walk through the garden looped in her memory like a scene she hadn't meant to memorize. And yet, she had. This isn't real, she told herself. But her heart didn't believe her. Not New Hour. At 2:17 a.m., she slipped on the hotel robe and stepped barefoot onto the carpet, moving toward the glass door that led to the small balcony. The ocean was dark and endless, silver-edged under the moonlight. Somewhere a seabird cried. Somewhere, her future was shifting, and she couldn't decide if it was terrifying or beautiful. It's just a job, she thought. But it wasn't. Not anymore. There was a knock on the door. Once, Lily froze. Every nerve in her body recognized it. She walked slowly to the door, heart in her throat. He opened it, and there he was. Aaron. Not in a suit, not even in his usual buttoned-out armor. Just a black t-shirt, barefoot, eyes tired, jaw unshaven. He looked like someone who hadn't slept either. He couldn't, he said, answering her question before she could ask it. Neither could I, she almost replied. Instead, go feel good on Jeep. He hesitated, then, I didn't like how it ended earlier. He looked at him, unsure whether to laugh or cry. What part? The part where I walked away. Lily's grip tightened on the doorknob. It was the right thing to do. Maybe, he said quietly, but it didn't feel right. He leaned against the doorframe. Henry, we can't do this. I know. He agreed, no real feelings, just a performance. You remember that, right? He nodded. But he didn't leave. Because the problem wasn't that they forgot the rules. The problem was, they remembered and wanted to break them anyway. He opened the door a little wider. Not as permission. Just so she wouldn't have to speak the words aloud. He stepped inside, slow, uncertain. He sat on the edge of the bed. He took the armchair, across from her. For a long time they said nothing. The silence wasn't awkward. It was something else. Something sacred. Finally he spoke. You don't know this, he said, voice low, but I don't let people in.
Lily looked at him.
I noted. It's not pride, he said. It's fear, disguised as control. I built this life by shutting down anything that could weaken me. Feelings, attachments, complications. She waited. He looked at her like she was the one exception. And maybe she was. But tonight, he continued, when you touched me in front of all those people, I didn't care what they thought. He exhaled. I just wanted to keep touching you back. Lily's throat went tight. I don't know what this is, Lily, he said, but I know it's not nothing. She blinked fast, trying not to cry. It was supposed to be pretend. I know. You told me not to get affected. He leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees, voice barely above a whisper. If we're going to stop this, say it now. If you're afraid, I'll walk away. But if you feel it too... He didn't finish the sentence.
Because in the space between their silences, the answer was already there.
Lily looked at him, really looked at him, and said the only thing she knew was true.
I don't want to pretend anymore. Henry closed his eyes for a moment, then opened them and nodded. Still scared, she added, voice shaking. So am I, he said, but I'd rather be scared with you than empty without you. They didn't kiss, but something passed between them in that room. Not hunger. something quieter, something deeper. And the moment a performance ended and real love began.
Chapter 7. Tell me it meant nothing. The sun hadn't risen yet. The sky was still caught in that fragile in-between, where the stars fade but refuse to disappear, holding on just a little longer before morning takes over. Lily's breath fogged the cold morning air as she walked barefoot across the dew-damp grass, arms folded over her sweater. Sleep had come in flickers, but peace, not once. He hadn't meant to end up here, on the cliffside path behind the resort, staring out at the endless gray-dew ocean. She needed quiet, and yet she heard shoes crunching softly behind her. He didn't turn, not at first. I figured you'd be here, Henry said quietly. Lily's voice was barely above a whisper. I almost didn't come. But you did. She turned to him slowly. He looked different this morning. No suit, no watch, no mask. Just Henry. Not the CEO. Just the man. They stood in silence for a moment, the wind playing with the edge of Lily's sleeves. I've been thinking, he said. Dangerous habit, she tried to joke. But her voice cracked. Henry stepped closer. I've done a lot of things in my life for strategic reasons, he said. Built this company, managed crises, even fake-gated my assistant to land a merger. He flinched. But he continued. None of those things scared me. And this, she asked, voice small. He met her eyes. This terrifies me. Her breath hitched. I've watched you hide behind sarcasm and strength, he said. I've watched myself do the same. Lily stared at the waves. We were never supposed to feel anything. Well, he paused. Call me it meant nothing. He blinked. What? Tell me last night. Every look, every moment meant nothing to you. Tell me you felt nothing and I'll walk away. Her throat tightened. Say it, he whispered. Say it, and I swear I'll leave you alone. The wind picked up, sharp and biting. She closed her eyes. And for one terrifying second she almost said it. But she couldn't. Not again, she whispered. The Henry's shoulders dropped slightly, the tension draining from him. She looked at him, tears threatening. I wanted it to be pretend. I needed it to be pretend. But you looked at me like I mattered. It would be called performance. You never were. Her voice trembled. What if this breaks us? He reached for her hand, slow and deliberate. Then we let it break us. He pulled her gently toward him, his forehead resting against hers. No rush. No demands. Just to people, finally quiet in a world that had been far too loud. When his lips touched hers, it was careful, slow, as if he wasn't kissing her for the first time, but the first time honestly. Her fingers curled into his shirt, his hand cradled her face. And in that kiss, there was no contract, no performance, no lie. Only truth. Only them. They pulled apart slightly, their breaths uneven. Does this mean the deal's off? Lily whispered. Henry smiled softly. It means I found something better. They would. He looked at her like she was the answer to a question he hadn't known he was asking. Chapter 8. Back to reality, pretending again. The sun was fully up when Lily returned to her room. The resort no longer felt like a secret world set apart from time. It felt like a hotel again, a place of departures, a place where beautiful things were meant to end. She didn't cry. Not yet. She packed slowly, brushing her hand across the borrowed navy dress she'd worn the night they first touched. She folded everything carefully, mechanically, like each movement might bring her some kind of order, because the heart didn't have any. At breakfast, Henry didn't speak to her, not in any obvious way. He sat across the table with Charles Callahan and two junior partners, talking contracts and post-merger strategy. His tie was perfect, his hair precise, his tone flawless, and his eyes never once met hers. Lily sipped her coffee without tasting it. Nata leaned toward her. You okay? Fine. You look tired, Lily finished. Well, I didn't sleep much. Natalie gave her a look. You're not the only one. On the flight back to Manhattan, he took a separate car from the airport. Lily sat in the back of the company SUV, staring out the window at the skyline she used to find comforting. Now it just felt sharp, cold, like a place where truth had no room. Back in the office, everything snapped into motion. Spreadsheets, emails, deadlines. At 33rd 4 a.m. Lee delivered Henry's itinerary for the week. 2 client meetings, a board call, a press review. At 11:12, she dropped off his dry cleaning voucher. He didn't speak a word. By 5:45 p.m., most of the staff had gone home. Lily sat at her desk outside his office, organizing the next quarter's schedule. Her chest ached. Not with heartbreak, but something worse. Doubt. But she imagined it all. The walk, the kiss, the way he whispered her name like it meant something. Was he really that good at pretending? Her cursor hovered over an emoji. Miss Hart. His voice sharp, cool, impersonal. Cut through. He stood. Yes, Mr. Ford? He didn't look up from his screen. Close the door on your way out. Something inside her crud. Of course. He turned to go, reached for the doorknob. And then she stopped. She turned back. I just need to know, she said softly. Was it all a game? Henry looked up. The air between them tightened. I told you not to get affected. Her voice was steady but low. You never said you wouldn't. They stared at each other. Be cute. Then he spoke. Do you want me to say it didn't mean anything? He hesitated. No. Then don't ask me to. His voice was raw now, no longer composed, no longer distant. Lily swallowed hard. So what do we do now? Henry leaned back in his chair, exhaled like the weight of everything was finally catching up to him. We survived Monday, he said. He nodded slowly. Then quietly. Neither am I. She stepped out of the office, closed the door behind her and leaned against the glass. Her chest still ached. But it wasn't doubt anymore. It was possibility. Chapter 9. The knock at her door. It had been 3 days since they returned to New York. 3 days of silence. 3 days of pretending in the office, of polite email exchanges and carefully averted gazes. 3 days of Lily waking up in the middle of the night and reaching for a feeling that wasn't there anymore. Or maybe it was. Just that he'd like him. She sat curled up on the couch, in an old sweatshirt and wool socks, a glass of red wine untouched on the coffee table. The city glowed beyond her window, its chaos muffled by glass and distance. She didn't want to feel anything, but she missed him. Not the man in the suit. Not the CEO. She missed Henry. The one who told her she was good for him. The one who kissed her like it meant something. The one who looked at her like she was the first real thing he'd ever touched. Her phone vibrated. The unknown got. It takes. Are you home? Before she could answer, a knock echoed at the door. Her heart stopped. He stood slowly barefoot, breath caught halfway in his chest. He opened the door, and there he was. Henry. No suit, no mask, just jeans, a navy sweater, and eyes that looked more tired and more open than she'd ever seen them. Really didn't speak. Randy. He held something in his hand, a small, crooked box. She stared at it. What is this? She asked, voice low. He stepped inside without waiting for permission. Not forcefully, just like a man who'd made up his mind and wasn't willing to waste another second. I made you something, he said. He blinked. You? He handed her the box. She opened it. Inside was a ring. A disaster of a ring, the ring uneven, rough, clearly handmade. She looked up, confused. It's awful, he said, but it's real, just like this. He stepped closer. I don't want a perfect performance anymore, he continued. I want the mess, the fear, the truth, with you. Release Wells. You're my boss. I'll resign tomorrow. You're impossible. "It was," he said softly, "until I met you." He laughed, choking. "Is this you proposing?" He tilted his head. "No, that would come with more planning." "Good," she said, "because I need time." Henry nodded, stepping closer. "I'll wait." She looked at the ring again. It was ugly. And it was hers. "They talk about perfect hair," she whispered. "It will be fine." He leaned in. She met him halfway. The kiss was quiet, familiar. No pretense, no pressure. Just home. When they pulled apart, she pressed her forehead to his. "I should be furious with you." "You are," he said. "It might make you grovel." "I'd prefer that to silence." He smiled. And this time she didn't ask if it was real. He already knew. Chapter 10: The Worst Proposal. And the best, yes. Henry had been pacing in the hallway for exactly 7 minutes. That's how long Lily let him wait after texting. He didn't mind. He was sweating through his shirt and carrying a lopsided paper bag with what he swore was the best croissant in Manhattan, because Lily once said she trusted anyone who brought her baked goods. He was also carrying a box. This time, a real one. Inside was a ring. But somehow, it didn't feel right. He took it out, stared at the perfect diamond under the hallway light, quietly returned it to his pocket. Down pulled out the other box. The crooked. Lily opened the door. "No suit," she teased. "No stage," he said. "Just a minute." She let him in. The apartment smelled like cinnamon and laundry. The same couch, the same blanket, but everything felt different. He turned to her. "Okay," he said, "I've made a list." He raised a brow. "A list? Of all the reasons you should say no." He crossed her arms. Interesting tactic. He once yelled at a CFO for using Comic Sans. She laughed. He stepped closer. "I've never done this. I don't know what love looks like in real life, but when you left the room yesterday I knew exactly what it felt like." Lily's heart stopped. Henry took a breath. "I didn't bring a speech," he said, "or champagne, or a candlelit orchestra." He held up the crooked ring. But I brought this." He stared at it. It was even, handmade, undeniably his. He dropped to one knee and whispered, "Marry me, and I swear I'll get better at the parts that scare you." Lily covered her mouth. It was shock because she was already crying. He knelt in front of him and took the ring from his hand. She slid it on herself and kissed him. Hard, laughing into the kiss. When she pulled away, she looked at him through tears and said, "This is the worst proposal I've ever heard." "I know. And the easiest yes I've ever given." They told no one for a week. They didn't post photos or plan a wedding hashtag. Instead, they bought coffee on street corners and danced barefoot in Lily's living room. They walked to work together like nothing had changed, except everything had. And one Saturday evening, as the sun set over the Manhattan skyline, Henry brought her to the company rooftop. No photographers, just them. And when he kissed her, with the city glowing behind them, he whispered in her ear, "You were never the mistake." Some love stories start with fireworks. Some start in silence. And some, like theirs, started with a mistake so ridiculous it couldn't have been anything but fate. It's been 8 months since Lily Hart became Lily Ford. They didn't have a big wedding. No ballroom, no headlines, just a small ceremony in a friend's garden, where she wore flats and he forgot the rings and had to borrow one from the best man. They laughed the whole way through it. Because real love doesn't wait for perfect moments. It happened in the messy ones. Now, on a quiet Sunday morning, Lily pours coffee into 2 chipped mugs and watches the man she once feared sit barefoot on their couch, still in his glasses, still muttering at the business section like it personally offended him. He's the same, and completely different. Because now, when he looks at her, he doesn't flinch at the feeling. He lets it stay. Their marriage has no public statement, no PR roll-up, but it has burnt toast and shared playlists and her old sweatshirt that he insists on stealing. It has fights over laundry, apologies whispered in the dark, and notes on the fridge that say things like, "Left early, but don't forget, this isn't pretend." Lily still remembers that first morning in his bed. The panic, the shame, the feeling that she didn't belong. He wakes up every morning and looks at her as she's the only place he's ever belonged. Sometimes she catches him watching her across the kitchen, like he still can't believe she stayed. And sometimes he says it out loud. "I spent my life building contracts. But you, Lily, some love great begin with flowers and fate. Sometimes it begins with a wrong turn, a closed door, a name whispered by mistake, and sometimes the room you weren't supposed to walk into leads you exactly where you're meant to be. If you've ever found something real where you least expected it, a moment, a person, a feeling, he told he saw a skin check in the comments. We'd love to hear how your story began. Because the best ones? They're never perfect, but they're always real.